Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Catch That. This is your host, Joe Dellera, and it is the final installment of the Money series with Brandon Anderson. We've got the Hope rankings for 2024. I'm going to let Brandon explain it a little bit better in a minute, and I'm not even going to ask him how he's doing because he ripped me on the last one, but we've just been ripped. We've been in a marathon session. These are going to come out, obviously, staggered, but for us, we've just been recording these back to back to back to back to back. So Brandon, let everybody know a little bit about the Hope rankings. But before that, obviously, be sure to like, subscribe, rate, review the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube, give us a 5-star rating. Super helpful for all of us. And we are going to get right into the Hope rankings. So, Brandon, tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, so I'm usually looking like the time frame on this gets shorter and shorter the way the NBA is moving these days, where things change so much. But generally speaking, I'm looking at like a 3-year window up ahead of like, okay, given where we're at of where the players are at, where the players are aging and developing either direction, given the contract situation and where the team's money is headed and where that's going to go, like where is the level of hope for these teams as fans? Obviously, the main thing is you want to win a title. So anyone, even if things might get ugly soon for your team, if you have realistic title hopes, like real title hopes, not the one where it's like, oh, I don't know, the Cavs have played pretty well lately. Are the Cavs a title team? No, the Cavs are not a title team. Nobody thinks they're a title team. Like if you can actually win a title, you're going to be further up this list. And if not, then what are you? Are you just tanking and like at least we have a direction, but it's a long way forward? Did you tank, but we started to get some young players and a little bit of hope moving forward, but it's going to be a minute still. Like we might make a play-in game, but it's going to be a few years yet. Like where's the direction your team is at? And I think too, almost the order is important, but so are the tiers and who belongs with the other teams. So we're going to talk about every team along the way. We'll kind of zoom through here, talk about the interesting teams. But that is the idea of the Hope rankings. It's my way. After I'm done with all the contract stuff and all the offseason, all my player evaluation, it's okay. Zoom all the way out, scan the forest, look at the whole chessboard. What's the league look like? And how do I need to think big picture about the league? Because that, for me, as a future is better. This is why I do this exercise, because it's informing how do I think about these teams and how do they think about where they're at and where they're going. So that's the Hope rankings.
Yeah. I think that in order to do this properly, like we really just need to go top down because I think it makes more sense to lead with the teams that we think are, in that top tier.
Yep.
And then like, honestly, it's like, look, we know the reality of this. Like you want to hear about the good teams first because at the end of the episode, it's like, all right, like I'm over this team. So look, tell me who you have in your tier 1 where you're saying these are true blue title contenders right now and in the next couple of years.
Yeah, so I just call this tier the all-in tier. And to me, what's not notable is number 1. It's notable that they're not alone in this tier. So number 1, of course, is the Celtics. You just won a title. Like you have the most hope because you just won the title. They're running it back, basically the same roster. There are concerns. There are always concerns. Al Horford probably his last year here.
Yeah.
We talked about Jaylen Brown contract. The team's going to get expensive. They're going to have a different version of this team. I think probably they have a 2-year, maybe even a 1-year window with this core of the team, but it's fine. They're the champs. They're the favorites to do so again. Notably, they're not alone in the tier. I have Oklahoma City number 2, and I actually long considered should they be number 1 on the list. That's how notable is here. They're the likely 1 seed. You got a possible MVP, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'll give you that right now. That is my MVP pick for the season, plus 600. I think he should be a clear favorite. I put him over 30% to win MVP. You got Chet and J-Dub in that order for me. They've got also a ton of picks. They got a war chest of Sam Presti picks just waiting. They went out this summer, added to already a 1 seed, 2 elite defenders, and Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein that are going to help the team right now and not hurt the team long term when these other young guys that are developing start to get their long deals. There's just so many options here. The runway forward, I think, is definitely even better for them than it is for Boston. Is there enough offense? I think, to me, that depends on J-Dub. Shea, I'm there on. Chet's probably not going to be that guy. They need the second star offensive guy. So I think this is a To me, they stay number 2 or 1B because I'm not quite there yet on J-Dub. But just the fact that they're in the Boston conversation alone, I think should merit its own conversation.
Yeah, I think we don't even need to talk too much about Boston, to be honest. Like, they just won the title, and they just were rolling through teams. With Oklahoma City, I I think that MVP probably goes one of two ways. I think that it's either Shea or Luka, because I think with Luka, not like to me, I feel like he's somebody that the media has wanted to give this award to.
Yeah.
Like we talk about this where you go to the title game, you go to the finals, and all of a sudden those things unlock for you. And like, to me, I'm wondering if this is just going to be like, oh, this is Luka's year, because although he played in some of those Olympic qualifying games, they didn't make the Olympics. He basically had a whole summer to like rest, recover, and in a way, like, maybe that was helpful for him to come into the season healthy. So that's one of the things. And then with Oklahoma City, I think there were some wrinkles that kind of developed in the postseason where you said, like, all right, like their opponents are doing things to them that are like disruptive, right? But and my biggest concern with Shea has always been, it's like, it was that joke. It was like, you could literally bet on him to score 31 points every night and you would make money. Like betting on the exact 31.
Exact 31. It was
exact
uncanny.
31. It was crazy. But at the same time, it's like, I didn't see him go and say like, all right, like, I'm going to go win this game. I'm going to go score 50. Because we need that today. Maybe it's because Oklahoma City doesn't need that. Like, they haven't needed him to really do that. But there were times in the playoffs where I was like, they kind of do. And it just never happened. So I do wonder, like, if there's a ceiling there, but I also think that you're probably right. The number for Shea is good to win MVP, and they're very clearly going to be a good, really, really good regular season team. And that's what they're going to be voting for MVP based off of. So I'm there with you for Oklahoma City. I do think they need another piece, but maybe they don't. Maybe somebody just rises up internally and that kind of fixes the problem. Looking at other teams that do have either MVP talent or like MVP or literal MVPs, talk to me about tier 2, because I'm a little surprised you don't have one team in there, and I'm a little surprised that you do have one team in there.
Okay, so I got 5 teams in my tier 2. I call this like the MVP equals title belief tier. So in order, and I do think that the order at the top mattered a little bit more to me. So I've got reasons for the order here that we can argue about. Here's my 5 tier 2 teams. Number 3, the Philadelphia 76ers. Number 4, the Denver Nuggets. Number 5, the Memphis Grizzlies, perhaps happy to be included here in this tier. 6, the Milwaukee Bucks. And 7, the Dallas Mavericks. So let's start with who is the team that you are surprised to see in this tier? Is it the Grizzlies?
I like the Grizzlies personally. I think that maybe they could have been in a lower tier, but the team that stood out to me is a team that I really struggle to see like the light at the end of the tunnel for them is Milwaukee. You have elite players, like historic, like Giannis is still incredible. Giannis is still an MVP. And I think he could have won MVP last year, honestly. Like, he was that good. I have so many problems with them because of the overall roster age. Damian Lillard's getting older, and Dame didn't look good. Chris Middleton looks like his knee, like his body is just going to like implode. Like, he needs like a replacement for every joint in his body, right? Like, Brooke Lopez is getting a little bit older. I know that they made some really good acquisitions, and we talked about this on our best contracts list, that are going to help them. But like, those are still guys you're paying basically the minimum. So it's like, I don't know how much I can say like, yeah, like I see real ceiling with guys like Prince or, even Gary Trent Jr. To me, it's like, this is a Giannis team, and like, unless Dame shows up, there's no like reinforcements coming, because they've spent everything to get where they are.
Yeah, I really don't even disagree with any of that. I agree with that, and I think that's actually why I have them lower in this tier of teams. To me, is just like this is a team that certainly, even a year from now, this could be down near the middle of the list, and 2 years from now could be like a bottom 5 team for a while if this goes negatively. And like, honestly, in life, that I usually focus more on the negative side of things rather than the positive side, just like as a person. But right now, the upside of the title winning possibility for them, I think still now with prime Giannis, who frankly was as good as ever offensively last year, especially if he can be healthy for the playoffs, and if Dame is still Dame, which we don't know, but to me, thinking big picture, I was thinking about this as you talked, and like this is a crazy statement that I'm gonna test out with you right now and cash that. I think that the Bucks, I could be talked into them being the second most likely NBA champion next season. Like the Celtics are number one, but if it's not the Celtics, I think I feel much better about picking a team out of the East where there is a
Yeah.
lot easier path to get to the finals. And if it's not Boston, why isn't it Boston? Well, maybe it's because you played Milwaukee and they had clearly the best player on the court in the series. And if Dame is still Dame, the best two players on the court in the series, you don't lose a lot of series when you have players that are that good. And like that is the level that Dame is at overall. And then certainly, like you very likely have the best player in the finals and probably the best second player there too, depending on who the matchup is. So I think to me, like the guys they got this year, and they still have like the probably the last year for Middleton and Bobby Portis and Brooke. I think like a year from now, it's gonna be bad. They don't have any picks. They don't have any young guys developing.
Yeah.
It could get real dark if this goes bad and Giannis wants out. That they are on the wrong side of this rankings, that we don't even talk about them for years. Right now, if I really think you might have the second best chance to win a title or even close to it, even one time, you have to be near the top of the list. That's the entire point, is trying to win a title.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at there, and I think that that's really probably where I'm looking at it. I'm like, I'm looking at the negative, and I'm just like, this team is not going to be good for very long. Like they've got like a little bit of a window here, and it's like it felt like they already wasted a year. So
Yeah.
maybe, and I think that's part of what the thing is, because I like you watch them play last year, and you're like, like I don't see it. Whereas with Memphis, I think that like last year it was a disaster. It was a nightmare year for them. But there were a lot of positives I think that you can take from what happened last year. You saw like expanded roles for Bane in particular, or Jaren Jackson Jr.
Yep.
They go and get a guy like Zach Edey in the draft, who I think can help them immediately because of the need that he fills. And then you get all these role players that like Gigi Jackson, like Vince, like whatever. You have all these players like on the roster that are getting better because they got more reps.
Yep.
I think that all kind of matters. But so for me, it wasn't Memphis that I was like, oh, like they don't need to be in here. I was a little bit cooler on Milwaukee because I feel like the window is so much shorter than than the rest of these teams really on this list.
Well, I think to me, Memphis, I still have them marked as like, I think they're Celtics West. I think this could be like, as everyone wants to duplicate, what do the Celtics do? They won with a 5-man lineup, an all-around team, not necessarily a superstar team. That's not who wins in the NBA. I think the Grizzlies are the team best set up to have that sort of team. Ja, Bane, and Jaren are still entering their primes. Like this, we forgot because last year was so bad, but this is a team on the rise still. We haven't even got the best version of them. We haven't even had those three play a healthy season together yet. Taylor Jenkins, I think, is an elite coach. So he got this team to be the number 12 defense last year, playing dudes off the street. Like that's crazy to be an above average defense with all these like young dudes. The guys you mentioned, like Vince Williams and Scottie Pippen Jr., and a lot of the guys down the bench being able to develop last year and now play winning roles this year. Like, I think that this is still a 2-year window of improving to what they can be. And then like the thing they're missing still is that star wing. They still need that guy that they keep trying to draft and not getting. But like, I think that Memphis is in this group. Like we are not talking about them collectively as an NBA media that way. Like they're right below Denver and Philly. That's the last two MVPs. And I do have some concerns there. Like Philly is a 3-man team. They need to round out the roster. I think they have a 3-year window that they probably get one real shot, where they're going to have one shot that Embiid actually stayed healthy for a run, and PG, frankly.
Yep.
But I think like that's their number 3 for that list. Again, they're in the East. That helps. And then Denver, there's a lot of things I'm worried about. You shouldn't be number 4 on the list. If you have the player that I think has been clearly the best player in the world 4 years running, you should be higher. But you're still number 4 because you still have Jokic, even though I'm worried about the contract stuff, Aaron Gordon expiring. There's some Michael Malone conversations. I don't know that MPJ is the right fit long term, just money wise with their team. But again, title teams, clear title teams, MVP winners, Memphis right there, ahead of Milwaukee, a team that I said could win the title. I don't really love Dallas, to be honest, in this group. That's why they're last in here. But you got Luka. Like, if you have Luka, and we don't know where this could go, only 2 more years of Luka before an option, only 1 year of Kyrie for an option. So it could get dark in Dallas if it doesn't go well. Feels pretty bright right now off the final. So I think they have to be in this list. I don't know if they're even really that much fun to watch personally. So that kind of hurts my hope rankings. But I don't know. I'm curious, what do you think? Did Dallas belong in this group to you, or would you have put them a little bit lower?
I think you just have to because of like Luka. But it's almost like to me, it's almost like I think that Milwaukee and Dallas could have almost been their own tier where you just say like you have like transcendent talent, like you have title winning talent. Like, and I think that maybe that's like the way to frame it with those two teams, because it's not even about like the team construct. It's about like how good is Giannis, how good is Dame, and then like how good is Luka. Like, and like that's really what those teams are about. It's just like if any of those guys isn't good, they're going to be bad. Like they're just going to be bad. Like there's nobody, like they're raising a team to a point that's like you can be in this conversation because those guys are so good. I think, to me, and it's weird because then like Memphis, it's almost like Philly and Denver, I think, are differently situated based on like the construct of the team around them. I think that they're better teams than Milwaukee and Dallas. For me, like Memphis, I think, is a really good team. The team that I felt like should have been in there, and you could call it Homer as much as you want, I think the Knicks and the Grizzlies are similarly situated. I think that you have comparable teams that are led by small guards in Brunson and Ja Morant. They play differently, but they're still small guards. You have a big who like has never really been like good enough in Jaren Jackson Jr. and Julius Randle. Jaren is like a great defensive player, obviously, but the offense has never really been quite where you need it to be. And then doesn't rebound the basketball. For the Knicks, you have Mitchell Robinson at the center position, who's always gets hurt. But for the Grizzlies, you're throwing out a rookie in Zach Edey. You don't know how that's going to go for the season. And then you have a ton of really good wings between like Bane, I think, is the best of the wings probably. But then like the Knicks, you've got Bridges, you have Anunoby, etc. So to me, I think that they're similar, but the Knicks, I'd rather be in the East. Like you have to rather be in the East.
So to me, Memphis, the city, is. So I don't know what the NBA is doing about that.
It probably should be in the East. Like, yeah. So I think that those two teams are closer in terms of like the similarity. Memphis is a little bit younger overall than New York, but New York is set in terms of their roster for the next couple of years, besides like the questions surrounding Julius Randle. So to me, I think I think the Memphis New York comp is close to me, because for New York, it's like, hey, like if things break right in the East, they're definitely a team that could go to the finals and then cause problems because they have, like, if they're healthy, they have so many people that can defend so many different positions. But tell me before, because you had New York in tier 4.
Let me talk about New York while you're talking about them, and then we'll get back to the tiers. So I think you make a very good case, honestly. I think New York to Memphis is a really good comp. So I have New York 2 tiers lower only because there's a 1-team tier that we'll mention shortly. So really, they're like just barely behind them. But like, look, I've done this exercise for many years. I didn't look back, but I just can tell you right now, this is the first time the Knicks have been a top 10 hope team like this century, right? Like, so I think here's the reasons why I feel a little bit more reservation with them. I think it's a very good comparison. It's a fun team. We like watching them. The Nova Knicks are fun. You trust the GM now in New York. Like, when has that ever been the case before? Ownership's making moves and paying guys. When has that been the case before? I think it's an intriguing matchup for the Celtics if they have the way the wings match up and everything. I think similar to Memphis. Is there enough offense to win a title? I'm not really sure. Is there a title ceiling? I'm not really sure for either of these teams. I think we need to get there still. I think from that perspective, that Memphis is younger gives me a little bit more hope, actually. I think they're further away than the Knicks, but I think the Knicks are closer to what they can be. Where the Grizzlies, there's a little bit more unknown that I like here, that I like. I want the more unknown because I think that the Knicks seem to me like a conference finals or finals losing team more than a champion team. Like really a lot's going to have to go right for them, as would with the Grizzlies. But Ja and Jaren and Bane still can get to a level that I'm not sure I see where that comes from the Knicks. And I think really the biggest difference to me is the coach. I think Taylor Jenkins is awesome. I don't think Tom Thibodeau is the right coach for this Knicks roster. If there were a lot of other options, like if you give me like Spo with the Knicks, I think I'd feel very differently. I think like Spo is unfair. Like that's the best coach in the league. I don't know the concept of what the Knicks are with all of their wings, with all the guys that you've got on the team. I don't trust that Tibbs is going to be the answer to figure out how to unlock that and be the team where it's like, oh man, the Celtics do not want to face the Knicks. Like, I think Celtics don't want to face the theoretical Knicks, but the version that Tibbs can provide for them, I don't trust to be there. So to me, that's I think it's a real possibility that Tibbs is not the coach a year from now. That something kind of like we disappoint this year, we get a disappointing playoff exit and have to do something because you invested so much in the team. And to me, it's almost like, I can't think of a good example off the top of my head, but we've had times where a coach like raises a team's floor significantly.
The perfect example is the Warriors.
Yeah, that's great. Like Mark Jackson to Steve Kerr. I think the Cavs are hoping that what they're doing now by moving on from JB Bickerstaff is like a much lower version of that. Like, okay, how do we elevate? I think the Knicks need the elevating coach, and I don't think Tibbs is that. And that's significant because like that is a piece away from being in that championship level tier. I think it's a good comp. That's my reason that they're a little bit lower for me. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really been what the criticism has been with Tibbs. It's just like he runs players in the ground, and there's questions about the way that he manages the minutes, the manages the rotations, etc. And that was why in the good contracts, the best contracts episode, I was talking about a little bit. I think one of the differences is, and like I didn't really go back and look through all of the former Tibbs teams that he's like literally running players into the ground, but like the Knicks are probably one of the deepest teams in the NBA period, like right now, like this year. And I do wonder if because of the depth and because he essentially like had to trust a lot of these guys last year, does he actually use the bench? Because like honestly, like if he just uses the bench, like then maybe this changes some of the analysis too, because you're saying like, all right, like they have fresher legs for the playoffs. Like they didn't play Brunson 40 plus minutes a game, they didn't play OG 40 plus minutes a game for like 10 games, then he died. So like those are some of the questions I think that you have to have. Like I think you could put them below Memphis, but I do think they should be in like the title belief tier, just based on the fact that like they look like they're set, like they have everybody that they need.
Well, I'm gonna let you believe they can be in your title belief tier for sure. I'm happy that Knicks fans have the belief. Number 8 in their own tier, we've alluded to a couple of times. It's the Wemby tier. It's the Spurs. Like, how are you not going to rank near the top of the hope list if you have the man that is hope itself on your team, Victor Wembanyama? There's not much else about the team that should rank this high on the list. Like, I like what they're doing, adding CP and Harrison Barnes. I think that helps make them more watchable now. There's not a lot of other stuff on the team that I'm super excited about long term. I like Devin Vassell. I hope Steph Castle turns out to be pretty good. I do think he looks pretty good, but it's going to be a while. This is my team. You can listen on Buckets over at Action Network. This is my all-in team for the year. I think the way Vegas sets up the Spurs for this year is way under what I expect them to do, which is if you look at as good a player as Wembanyama is, which I think he is a top 5 player in the NBA right now already and has been this calendar year in 2024, teams like that have like a decent to bad roster around them. Historically, you look at like a Kevin Garnett team, a T-Mac team, David Robinson or Hakeem Olajuwon on their like bad teams. Those bad teams won 45 to 50 games. Dwayne Wade before LeBron teamed up in Miami is another good one. These are 45, 50 win teams. And I think that's how good Wembanyama is right now. I love their over. You and I have talked about like 40 plus wins, 45 plus wins, I
Yeah.
think is in play. I played the division odds. I think it's a tough division, but I think that they can be in the mix in the division if I'm right about Wemby, like possibly making them even the number one defense. So we don't need to talk much more about Wemby himself, but this is a betting podcast. I want to give out some bets for you.
Yeah.
I'm betting Spurs stuff. I'm not betting defensive player of the year because the odds are so crazy, even though I clearly think he would win in this scenario. But I think betting on the Spurs in as a proxy for that and lots of Spurs overs is my top betting interest for the year.
Yeah, I bet them to win. The problem is like that they have to play in the same group as the Oklahoma City Thunder, but I did bet them to win Group B of the NBA Cup. It's 10-1. I like that. And then honestly, like if you're gonna bet them to win the cup, like you need to bet him to win like tournament MVP.
Sure.
And the odds are significant for him. I'm looking at like an 85-1 on FanDuel.
Wow.
Like because realistically, like if he's in there, like it's possible that they can get there. You know what I mean? It's like if I have to pick them in like that type of tournament style, sometimes like the best player just wins. And like when you have a guy, the thing I like about the NBA Cup is it's early in the season. So Chris Paul's probably not dead. Like he's probably still relatively healthy. And having him to like run the offense with Wemby, who's also probably healthy, I think that you're going to like this number, I think can only get shorter. I don't see any scenario where this number gets longer by the time we get to the start of the cup. And I think at those like 10-1 and then like an 85-1 on a guy like Victor, who could be the best player in any game, matters, because I think what happened last year is the Lakers in particular, as an older team that like looked like a team that was going to go for a title, they specifically like faded after the NBA Cup. Like they made that sprint to get the cup, like, and then they were bad for like a month. I wonder if that influences some of these other like title hopeful teams to maybe like just say like, like we don't need it. Like the Lakers got it was the first one, cool, LeBron, whatever. But then like that's not what our goal is. We want to win a title. Like we're not going to go crazy to try to win these games because it's just extra load on these players. So I do wonder maybe if it's better to bet some long shots this year in that market.
I like that.
Now I just mentioned the Lakers. Talk to me about, you had the Knicks in this tier. Talk to me about who else is in this tier along with the Knicks and obviously the Lakers.
Yeah, so I think we can start kind of speeding up a little bit now that we've got past the main title teams. So my next tier 4, is the just enjoy the ride tier. Probably not the title that you would want to put your Knicks into this group, but I do have them the top of this tier. So number 9 through 12, I've got Knicks, Timberwolves, Lakers, and Warriors. I can nitpick a lot of things here about the construction of the teams, or is there a title upside on the team? The Timberwolves with the salary stuff and the ugly ownership thing, Lakers and Warriors. The stars are old. We're only going in one direction here. But look, the Timberwolves nearly were the 1 seed last year and nearly made the finals. Greatest season probably in franchise history. The Lakers are the Lakers. You still get to watch LeBron. You still get to watch Steph. Like, I can't really feel too sorry for you from a hope ranking standpoint. I think let's be realistic about it. And I think this is where you're like, yeah, don't put the Knicks in the group with all the stuff you just said. That's fine. I can give you that one. We'll put the Knicks and the Grizzlies like in their own tier together, separate from the other tiers. Yeah, you can't be too upset about these teams, but I think we can be realistic about Timberwolves, Lakers, Warriors, and where we're at this point.
Yeah, I think so too. And they have like those like kind of windows. Maybe if everything breaks right, like to the 95th percentile or better outcome, like that's where they could go. Maybe even 99th. But it does seem to be difficult right now to envision like anything real happening for those teams in the next couple of seasons. Now, the tier 5 is an interesting grouping of teams because they're like all over the place, like in terms of like obviously geographically, but then also in terms of like what ages they have on the team, what the brackets look like what these team rosters look like. Talk to me about the 5 teams you have in this list and which team you think has the most upward or downward mobility.
Yeah, so I call this the tier 5, you know what, we'll take it tier. And I think what these teams do have in common is that they're all kind of mid-market teams that like not every team should have as their goal title or bust. Some teams need to, like, of course, every team wants that, but some teams can be content with, like, we are a clear playoff team. We can win a round, and that might be the best we can come up with because stars leave and go to LA and New York, and that's just how things work. So 13 to 17. This is basically right in the middle of the league here now. Pacers, Cavs, Pelicans, Magic, and Kings. Look, you can hear me say lots of terrible things about the Magic and the Kings elsewhere. Like, these are not roster constructions that I love. So they're at the bottom of the list. Like, they're teams that I'm not going to be too excited about. In a weird way, though, I think the answer to both of your questions of upward mobility and downward mobility might be the Pelicans, because I don't know what in the world that roster is doing. It seems like a move or two away. I really like the possibility of a lineup with DeJounte and a bunch of their like really good wings. We talked about Herb Jones and Trey Murphy on their best contract list. Zion at center. We didn't talk about him on the best contract list, but I had him on there as like an honorable mention. A lot of protections in that deal that helped them. I can't help but feel a little disappointed about Zion from what I hoped he would be as a prospect, but he still has been very good. I'm intrigued by what the Pelicans could be if it doesn't involve Brandon Ingram and we get like either a center or we get some other depth pieces for the team or some other move. I don't think they're there yet. So it could be the right move and things are great. It could be that it just doesn't really come together. It's a team that I've really struggled to figure out. Willie Green also, like a lot, like I know a lot of folks don't think he's great. I don't think he was great in the playoffs last we saw, but he has made them into a really good defense year after year, and that doesn't make any sense with the personnel on the team. So they're the upward mobility team to me. I think like Pacers and Cavs, they are what the Pacers were last year. Like the upside for that team is exactly what we just saw, which is things break right, you stay healthy, you catch a couple of breaks, you make the conference finals and go out valiantly. I think that's okay. I think if you're the Cavs and the Pacers, like, of course, you rather let LeBron grow up in Akron and play for the Cavs and win a title, but I think you can't argue too much about that if you're those teams. So that's kind of where I'm at on those teams. Who stands out in this group to you between Pacers, Cavs, Pelicans, Magic, or Kings?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the Pelicans are you're spot on. Like, if you had to say which team out of these, like, if you could just rate it based on like raw talent on the roster, it's the Pelicans by like a mile. But like, the pieces just don't make any sense together. The team that I think has the most upward mobility out of these is the Cleveland Cavaliers, because I don't think that we've seen like everything that we could see out of Evan Mobley. And like, if Mobley is able to play the five, if he's able to maybe stretch the floor a little bit, and they signed Jared Allen's contract was particularly interesting because they did the opposite of the Lauri marketing contract, where he signed the extension on the last day possible, where he could be traded at the deadline. I think that there's a possibility that Cleveland could move on from Jared Allen, insert Mobley at the five, and you can extract, I think, a lot of value for what Jared Allen is as a player, and maybe bring something in to help this team. So to me, I think that Cleveland, you have Donovan Mitchell, you have Evan Mobley. I think that there is some possibility for some upward mobility there, but it still just seems a little bit like this is a tough grouping to be in. Like, the ceilings are capped.
You know what's interesting too is like Jared Allen on the Pelicans would be a pretty fascinating fit for both of these teams. I don't know how I'd feel about like Ingram going back the other way necessarily, but I don't know if I really hate that either. Like I could see Allen as the center defensively on the Pelicans makes a lot of sense to me. And I could see like those teams being the right trade fit for each other even.
Yeah, I think that there's definitely some possibilities there for these teams to kind of maybe work out a deal together and stay mired in mediocrity, or at least maybe move up a tier on their own. Now, looking at the next grouping, it's so funny because this is a perfect tier name. It's been so long, man. Like, these teams, like, we've been talking about these teams forever. It's like they got to get out of it eventually, right? What's up with these two teams?
Yeah, I've just got two teams here. It's been so long, man. Number 18, the Houston Rockets. Number 19, the Detroit Pistons. Look, I really like what Houston's doing. I really like their guys. This is not a team I have spoken positively about. Like, when we go on buckets every year in July, this is my first under that I give out for the new season every year.
Every time.
Every time. I didn't do it this year. I'm out. No more unders for Houston, though I do lean under this year because I think expectations are a little too high. I want I want long-term Houston futures. I'm talking like 3 years from now, Houston futures, where they have finally decided, oh yeah, we're going to keep Şengün and not Jalen Green. We got to choose one of them. Which one should we choose? The chucker that is inefficient and only plays well the last month of the season, or like one of the great young stars in the NBA in Alperen Şengün that I think is legitimately really good. The roster around him has a lot of pieces there, a lot of young guys I like. They got Reed Shepherd basically for free, who was my number one player in the draft that they lucked into. They traded that pick away, top 4 protected in the Russell Westbrook deal, and then got the pick high enough they got to keep it. I thought Amen Thompson was incredible defensively last year. Jabari Smith is exciting. I think is maybe on like the Jaren Jackson Jr. path. He took a big step last year. Freddie Van Vliet is really good. Soon enough, they won't have Dylan Brooks around anymore and Jalen Green anymore, probably. And then I'll move this team up my rankings a little bit. I think it does Houston a bit of a disservice to put them in a tier with Detroit. I think Houston is a much better place talent-wise with them. And I think a lot of folks would say, well, shouldn't these teams both be higher? Like, I'm excited. I have hope. We've got all these young guys. Yeah. When's Houston going to win a playoff series? Like, we're a ways away from getting to the hope stage. And again, this is like a 3-year outlook. I think if they got to a playoff win by year 3, that'd be a pretty positive outcome for Houston. Certainly for Detroit. I don't think that they're in that spot either. So it's all right. We did the tanking. We're past the tanking. Please, Detroit, be past the tanking. No more tanking. I like the pieces. I like Ron Holland, Asar Thompson. Maybe this is the Thompson twins tier. I don't know. Like,
yeah, the Thompson
I like
tier.
What's happening here. We're a ways away. Let's develop. Let's have some fun. These are like, hey, they're on NBA TV tonight. I'll watch the Pistons play. I'll watch the Rockets. Like, these are league pass teams that I'm going to enjoy that I haven't enjoyed. They're usually bottom 5 in this list. They made their way out. Congrats.
Yeah, and I think that then leads us obviously to tier 7, which you've titled "You're Lying to Yourself, Bro." And I think that makes a lot of sense though, because when you look at these 3 teams, you're looking at 3 teams that it almost is like the league passed them by. Like, they had their window and the window is like basically shut. I think that it is shut for one of these teams for sure.
Yeah.
The other 2, like, maybe if things break right. But talk to me about these 3 teams.
Yeah, 20, 21, 22. It's the Suns, the Heat, and the Clippers. I feel bad having the Suns in this group. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
like
that was the team.
I did this list, and then I like did my NBA prep for the season. And I have the Suns like in the running for the 1 seed. So I probably should have them up like in the Lakers and Warriors tier at least, maybe. But it's such an expensive team. Everything is superfluous. Like, all the guys they have are just like a lesser version of each other. Durant and then Booker and then Beal and then Grayson Allen all the way along. But I do think they actually like made the roster a lot better this year. We talked about adding Tyus Jones, Monte Morris, Mason Plumlee. Don't forget they added Royce O'Neal last year, who I thought was really good for them. And I hope that they start him. We'll see with the roster construction. I don't know if Suns belong on this list. They're maybe a bit low here. The Clippers and the Heat, I just think, like, I'm just done. I don't need this anymore. Like, I don't need to pay attention to this. You're not a contending team. Your stars are has-been stars. Like, you never know with Riley and South Beach. You never know with Jimmy Butler. I guess you never know with Kawhi Leonard, but I feel like we do know at this point. These are the false hope teams that, like, you're LA and you're Miami, so we have to pretend like you're the landing spot for every star, but like, you're out. You have no picks to trade. You have no young players to trade. Like, why are we pretending like these are teams that still matter? I'm tired of it. I think they're lying to themselves. I think they're lying to us. I feel bad Phoenix is in this group, but these are the 3 teams that I think don't actually have hope. They're selling us some fake hope here.
Yeah, I think that it's like we've seen what they can do. And like Miami had like that magical run to the finals against Denver. And then that's to me like the 99th percentile outcome, because we're never seeing them play enough regular season games to be highly seeded. So it's like you're going to be running into like a top tier team in the East like multiple times. You have to go through an extra good team, and that just makes it so much more difficult. Now, who do we have in tier 8? These are some teams that like have some young talent, but it doesn't really feel like there's enough cohesion there.
Yeah, I call it youth is wasted on the young. It's the Hornets at 23, the Raptors 24, the Blazers 25. You had a note here about the Raptors. Could be okay, but I don't know. Yeah, I probably would put the Raptors at the top of this tier where I'd rank them again. I kind of like, I thought RJ and Quickly actually both are really good after the trade for them, and
Yeah,
Scotty looks really good. You still got Masai, so they can get their way out of there. I don't know, like there's some fun young players on these teams, but they're not going to be very good. We'll see in a couple of years.
exactly. So we're getting down to the end of this list. Talk to me about tier 9, the slow burn. Uh, I think one of these teams at least has like a real player on the team. But so talk to me about the Utah Jazz and the Brooklyn Nets.
Yeah, it's just the Jazz and Nets. To me, the like obviously like Lowry is good, and we talked about Colin Sexton. Like Sexton would be the best player on Brooklyn pretty easily for me as well. So again, maybe not a fair pairing. The reason these are paired is like this is the early stages of the teardown and the long term rebuild. We know, like we trust where these things are going, but like I don't think I don't know when we see either one of these teams even contend for the playoffs, let alone a playoff series win. Like we know what direction now. We got some clean books. We got good contracts. There's plenty to like compared to the last three teams on the
Yeah,
list. But like you're going down before you come back up, and that means like think of it this way. This is where Houston and Detroit were for a few years. And it took those years to get there just to get these young players we like that were still several more years away before they actually matter. That's where Utah and Brooklyn are at, where it's like, all right, it's not that terrible, but also like you're not really relevant and it's going to be a long time before you are.
yeah. Brooklyn at least has the edge of being like in New York. So like maybe you can get a free agent. Like if you do well in the draft or
Sure.
something, and the team looks okay, then like maybe you get a free agent. Utah, they already have Laurie, but like free agents aren't necessarily flocking to Utah on a regular basis. Now looking at tier 10, the bad place, the bottom of the list. Hit us with these three teams.
Yeah, this is the end, and I'm sorry. I'm sorry to my fellow Chicago Bulls fans. Number 28 at the bad place, the Atlanta Hawks. Number 29, the Washington Wizards, and dead last, number 30, your Chicago Bulls. It's ugly. These are all teams out in the East. This is like the treadmill of mediocrity. And Chicago, I think, finally got off the treadmill, but I think they did it too late. So they didn't really get a whole lot. They got nothing really for DeMar. They couldn't even facilitate the trade the right way. They got no picks out of DeMar and Caruso. They're stuck
Yeah.
with Zach and Vooch and now Pat Williams. They stuck themselves with Pat Williams for some reason. Like they've got some young guys, but like they are the Wizards, I think, a year or two early, where like at least the Wizards now have gotten off the treadmill of mediocrity. They get out of the Beal deal. It's a long ways away for them, though. Like their best asset on the team is the pick still, because
Yeah.
it was supposed to be Alex Sarr, but he looked not great at Summer League. So we'll see about that. Sarr, Bub Carrington, Koulibaly, like young guys, they're real young, but I think they are a long ways away from being anything. Joe, can you even name the coach of the Washington Wizards? Do you know the name of their coach for this season?
I forget, honestly.
It's Brian Keefe, who I literally had to like look up who he was when I was prepping for the season. Like, I'm sorry, who? When did I miss this announcement? So
Yeah.
just like these teams don't matter. The Hawks at least have Trae Young, who I think is a little underrated and should have a pretty good bounce back season.
Yeah.
But
Jalen Johnson
they're
too.
going
So
nowhere fast with this team. It just
yeah.
we're stuck down here, and it's not fun. And I will not be setting a season pass Chicago Bulls when the new season starts on my DVR.
No, you definitely don't need to. I think Atlanta definitely has like the ability to maybe get out of this. Like, I don't want to say soon, but like maybe they have some ability to get out of this based on, having Trae Young, having Jalen Johnson. Like you do have like a little bit of like a leg up on the Wizards and the Bulls, I think, but it still is like the ceiling just doesn't seem to be there. And they seem to just continue to be like leaning on the fact that they made the conference finals, that like kind of and like that's actually one of the worst things that can happen to an organization is
Yeah.
like you do that and then you're stuck with what you have. And we'll have to see, like Indiana we have pretty high up on this list. We'll have to see if Indiana falls into that same trap or not.
Yeah.
But
Portland
really,
also. Portland's another one that did that.
yeah,
And now look, they're almost near the bottom of this list as well, where they made the conference finals run and then it wasn't real and they got stuck with it.
exactly. So it's weird because that like making the conference finals, like people was like, oh, like that you're a good team. the conference finals can just be a couple breaks, and you do wind up there. And it's not always the best teams that end up going that far. But Brandon, it's been a pleasure doing the Hope ratings with you. We got to do a quick pods and Recs though. Tell me what you got for the fellas.
So I got look. It is the first day of the new Survivor season, so of course I always recommend Survivor season 47. Go out and watch. But if it's the Hope rankings, and I'm making a life recommendation right now, I'll bring you TV shows and movies another time. Here's my life recommendation: get a girlfriend. I got a girlfriend. It's great. Hold hands. It's wonderful. It's brand new in my life. It's great. That's my pods and Recs. Have a girlfriend and hold her hand. It's wonderful. I love it. It's wonderful. I'm really happy. And I don't have to just watch basketball all the time. I can hang out with my girlfriend now. It's great.
That's awesome. That's a great recommendation, honestly. So we're all happy for Brandon and his girlfriend. So this is really nice. And my recommendation is I'm gonna recommend getting like a reclining sofa. So if you can get I love my couch. It's like I spend a large majority of the time in my house like on my couch, and what I like about the couch is it's got like all this, like half of the seats, it's like a sectional, but like some of the seats have an electric recliner, and like you can lay like almost all the way flat, and it's just tremendous. There was a point where it didn't match like what we had going on in the living room, and we were like, well, we'll get a different we'll put a different couch in here, and like we'll put the other couch in the man cave like downstairs, and instead we were like, I literally lasted a day. I couldn't do it. I was like, I can't do this. So the couch went back upstairs, and I bought more pieces for it. So it's like a bigger couch because it's one of those that you could add pieces on, and it's just the best thing in the world. So I'm gonna recommend like a reclining sofa. Highly recommend. It's probably a good place to sit with your girlfriend.
Yeah, I was gonna say maybe a double recommendation here. Just go ahead and pull off both recommendations together.
Yeah, it's a perfect combination. So Brandon, it was a pleasure having you on for the Money series. If you guys didn't listen to some of the other episodes, we have the hidden contract details, the best contracts, and the worst contracts in the NBA, and obviously these Hope rankings. And it was all between me and Brandon Anderson, and it was an absolute pleasure to have you guys on. We hope you enjoyed the Money series, and let's continue to cash that.